The beta's out, Dragonflight beta's out, and Vengeance Demon Hunter has gotten its talents, and with Vengeance we have concluded every spec in the game having actually talents. Now, is Vengeance actually good? Spoiler alert. It's pretty good. And we will be talking about Vengeance today, so keep your eyes peeled, stay tuned, and let's actually get right into it now. The beta is out, and just a little bit out of the way, if you are interested, you can apply for the beta. There's details in the Battle.net app launcher. With that being said, Vengeance Demon Hunter is going through some things. It's not yet complete. I do have to preface it by that there's, I think, at least 2 talents that there's no talents. It's just placeholders. There's like holes in it, like in my heart, that need to be filled with good shit, like my heart. And we will kind of not talk about that very much, but those could be very important because one of them is at least a capstone. Now, before we go into the details, let's quickly talk about the general talents because some of them are actually pretty important for Vengeance. And first of all, before we get to the ones that everybody likes to talk about, we have Fellblade now, which is really cool, and it's also at a choice node with Immolation Aura. Now, Fellblade can be an amazing source of fury, and maybe it is because of a particular bug, maybe it is because of the low gear, but right now generating fury takes a little while, and it feels like I'm generating souls at a much faster rate than I generate fury. Let's say to get the 5 souls for Spirit Bomb, I have to get the fury for a Spirit Bomb, I have to over-generate about 3 to 4 souls that just, you know, they heal, right, but they're not put to any use to like a soul cleave or a spirit bomb or anything like that. So having an extra source of fury might be mandatory at the moment. Obviously things can change and tuning can still happen, but Fellblade is particularly good, especially since it's a small gap closer. Like, you know, Vengeance needs a little bit of mobility, guys. Red Paladins, no, what are you doing? All right, now let's actually go into the thing that everybody that plays Vengeance is talking about. And if you're not talking about it, you should be talking about it. You, as a Vengeance, will get Blur and Darkness. And this is fucking hilarious because this actually points it out that Havoc has had more defensives than fucking Vengeance. Jesus Christ. So yeah, you get Blur initially at a 50% dodge chance, but you still have a 20% DR for 10 seconds on a 1-minute cooldown, which is crazy. And obviously you can get this per instincts, but probably not. And Darkness, which is, wow, this is pretty good. It's a nerfed version of the current Darkness because it does have a 5-minute cooldown. However, you can upgrade it with one of the 2 choice nodes just below it, depending exactly on what you want to do. Either reduce its cooldown by 2 minutes or increase its duration by 2 seconds, which I talked about this in the Havoc video as well. It's nice, depends on the encounter and how often you want it. Maybe you don't want Darkness every 3 minutes, but you do want it to last a little bit longer since the phase, the damage, the mechanic, the whatever it is in the raid, because likely you'll use it in the raid more. What it is in the raid lasts a little bit longer. Right now in the dungeons, we haven't seen any particular mechanic that does a lot of damage for 10 consecutive seconds. But then again, we haven't seen all the dungeons and we haven't done Mythic Plus, so who knows, but that's the main thing that you need to take away, and likely, I mean, you'll want these, obviously, and to get Blur, you'll get Chaos Nova. So not only that, you'll have an AoE stun as well, so fucking Vengeance is getting some buns, man. Finally, after how many years? 5? 6 years? Jesus! Now, another thing to point out is that in the middle, especially going towards Darkness, although you'll probably take Chaos Nova anyway, you will want, most likely, Demonic, which right now doesn't work on beta, and that kind of sucks, because that's actually an important point to see exactly how that influences the spec, although the content that we have access to right now on the first day of beta, because we haven't leveled everything up, we don't have max levels anymore, max tunes, shit dies way too quick, and I feel 0 threats towards my Vengeance Demon Hunter, but I digress. And you do have Demonic Origins, which is interesting, because with Demonic Origins, you can essentially have your meta on a 1-minute cooldown, but only lasts for, what is it, 3, 4, 5 seconds, something like that, so very little, because it does reduce the duration of it by 10 seconds. However, you can get this essentially, Demonic Origins can essentially change how Metamorphosis is seen. So right now you pop it, you're big, fat, and you survive, you're immortal for, what is it, 15 seconds, something like that, right? With this, you'll basically have a 1-minute survive a tank buster type mechanic, right? So I think that's actually kind of cool. It's cool that, you know, maybe you don't need meta for that amount of time. However, it's gonna be hard to think about either getting or not getting demonic, because demonic has been pretty good. However, demonic has probably been picked more than anything because it kept you alive as a vengeance, and you would have to cycle demonic windows with demon spike windows with firebrand windows all throughout Shadowlands to make sure that you survive that high octane content that other tanks have an easier time doing it. But seeing as what we're gonna be getting in the spec talent tree, which I will talk about in a second, maybe you don't need that much demonic to survive, but who knows, this could of course change on, I don't know, plus 30, plus 40 keys. I don't know what we're gonna do in Dragonflight, sky's the limit. And one other thing is that on the right hand side, this is something that I particularly was hit by, and I am a little bit on the fence with this. I am sure that maybe other Vengeance Demon Hunters has hit this, but I don't know if it actually bothers a lot of people. To me, this is bothersome. So on the right hand side, you will have a choice node with the sigils, because there's a bunch of sigil stuff on the right hand side. You will have concentrated sigils, which now makes the sigils be placed at your feet, which is this has never been a thing, I don't think. No, so we did have concentrated sigils that were placed at our feet, but you normally never really use this because you can just use a macro to it, but now you can actually pick it, and their effects is increased by 2 seconds. You also have a choice of precise sigils, which now makes sigils being placed at your target location. So first of all, the issue with concentrated sigils making you forced to put your sigils at your feet is that you cannot pull dungeon packs with like a sigil of silence, right? You cannot fear or silence mobs that are away. You have to be in melee range for that to happen, and that kind of sucks. And to that point, precise sigils isn't much better because this places the sigils at your target's feet. Precise sigils might be good in raid, right? At the boss, maybe you leap away, you press Sigil of Flame, it puts it at the boss's feet, or maybe there's a target that moves around and moves away. Maybe that's where precise sigils could be good. That's not too bad, although that does, so the issue with the sigil type mechanic, which is something that, you know, is better exemplified by Ring of Peace for monks, is that sometimes you want it to be put precise to encompass a very specific area. If they're locked on your target or on yourself, you will have less control over the effect of the sigils. Maybe that won't even matter, but that's what I'm thinking at the moment, because the counter option is to go with Lost in Darkness, which makes Spectral Sight last an additional 6 seconds if it's disrupted by attacking or taking damage. So if you want to have control over sigils, you're gonna be forced to take an option that has nothing to do with your utility. I mean, I would be surprised if out of the 6 dungeons that we've managed to test right now that have seen 0 use of Spectral Sight, that Lost in Darkness is gonna have enough value to not feel like a wasted point to get to the one below, which you will probably want to, especially as a tank, the Will of the Illidari, rather, to get the increased 4% extra health. I mean, this 4% is not that much, but it is important, especially since when you're getting to meta, you get like those big bursts of HP. So that is my maybe only realistic gripe with all of this stuff. But I guess we'll see how it plays out, because we're missing raids right now, so we don't know exactly if either of these will be useful, because they will be necessary, I believe. Now let's go into the spec talents and look at some of this. So first of all, just a general impression of the talents that I've managed to go into is that it's a little bit hard to have more flexibility at the bottom side of the talent tree where the capstones are, because of how the layout is, because it's a little bit restrictive, because you're either going to be really smack dab in the middle, and if you go throughout the middle, you'll have very little access to the sides unless you're going to waste a lot of points to do so. Or you go to one of the sides, which will make the other side almost 100% inaccessible, considering that you'll still want the middle, because the middle part is where your tankiness comes through, and we'll go into that in a second. But there are very good reasons to go to either side, and there are some options in either side that work towards building the other side of the talent tree into a better. So I would expect that Vengeance will have some talents moved around, or maybe some more paths created, because right now there are a lot of cool stuff, and I don't see how, let's say, making a synergy of one type of mechanic is going to be overpowered enough that you want to spread those options out to reduce the amount of, you know, power that one build can build with the ease of access. So that's my general thoughts on the talent. Now let's actually talk about the details. First of all, you'll notice that as you start the talent, though you start with Fell Devastation, you have Frailty as a talent, which is a passive which was before historically being used by Spirit Bomb to put a debuff on your enemies that makes you get healed when you deal damage to them, and I cannot, for the life of me, I can't remember if it also increased your fire damage to them. I think it did increase your fire damage to the targets debuffed with Frailty. Now you'll get that, and Frailty actually builds on the left-hand side of the talent tree into an actual Frailty build, which we will talk about in a second. But like I mentioned, the middle side is where the beefiness comes through, and this is probably what makes pretty much, and me included, all the Vengeance Demon Hunters more excited, because you're squishy, man. Like right now, the default Vengeance in Shadowlands is fucking squishy. If you don't, even if you have Demon Spikes up, that's sometimes in a decent high enough content is not enough, and you will rely very heavily on Metamorphosis and resets of Fell Devastation to proc more demonics, right? This is kind of how tanking feels for Vengeance, and it's kind of shitty for you to be a big, fat, spiky demon and be squishier than, I don't know, a DK or a Warlock. That's just weird. So to answer that, the wonderful devs that have designed Vengeance have come with Demon Spikes builds. And Demon Spikes is baseline, but you do have a couple of, five talents that build into Demon Spikes, empowering them. So it's broken down into multiple abilities. Luckily, the majority of them are one-pointers. So first of all, you have Deflecting Spikes on the left-hand side, which gives you 15% power, extra parry for 5 seconds as you pop Demon Spikes. It's, you know, whatever. You'll probably want that anyway. Retaliation, which is, while Demon Spikes is active, melee attacks against you cause the attacker to take attack power, take physical damage back, reflected. This damage is very tiny. I would like to have this, because Pro Warrior had something similar with Spiked Shield, and I feel like Spiked Shield was tuned a little bit better. This, I've looked at some of the logs that I was able to make with Vengeance. It just doesn't do that much. It generates a lot of threat, and it's good to keep AoE threat down, and it doesn't seem like it's target cap, so maybe that's the point of Retaliation, not necessarily to do damage. But obviously, if you shoot spikes out of your body, you kind of expect to do a little bit of damage. Just a little bit of damage, man? I don't know. And you have also on the right-hand side, Calcified Spikes, which is maybe the more enticing one out of the bunch. You take 10% reduced damage after Demon Spike ends, and this 10% fades by 1% per second. And you could, you know, say, yeah, sure. It fails down, you re-rotate spikes, you get Fiery Brand up, you put Demonic up, or whatever, and then you augment the lack of mitigation during the window, and Calcified Spikes makes the transition between Demon Spikes and another defensive easier. Also, the fact that lower down the tree we have Feed the Demon, which I didn't want to go right away into it, but it does make a good segue. Feed the Demon is also something that's, you know, kind of a controversial thing for Vengeance, because it was something that would have solved a lot of the tankiness issues for Vengeance across the years, but it was always a weird choice in the old talent tree system, where you would have to sacrifice a lot to get Feed the Demon, and most of the time I think it was Fracture was on the roll with Fracture, or was it on the roll with Spirit Bomb? Either way, you would hardly, I think the only time that I remember Feed the Demon was actually advised to be picked was 8.3 BFA, where you had the pool all of the packs in dungeons, Vengeance, you hop into a place, you never move, and you constantly generate back-to-back souls, you cap on Fury, and all of the souls that are extra generated will be feeding into reducing the cooldown of Demon Spikes. But with Feed the Demon and everything else and all the soul generating mechanics that you will have, there's a very high chance that you will have a huge uptime on Demon Spikes, and if you rotate the uptime, you'll have a very huge, maybe 100% uptime on Calcified Spikes, which is obviously really good, because outside of Demon Spikes, it's nice to not be a DPS level of tank, right? And you also have one last one, which is Extended Spikes, increase the duration of Demon Spikes. Right now it's set to 0 seconds, so I would imagine this is a bug, but I don't know. I would expect this to be, because it's a 2-pointer, 0.5% increase per point, or a 1 second increase per point. So either a total of 1 extra second per Demon Spikes or 2 extra seconds. 2 extra seconds seems good. It might be a little bit too much. We'll see. because right now Demon Spikes last 6 seconds, you have 2 charges, you get a lot of soul shards, so you have a lot of uptime. 2 seconds might be a little bit too much. I'm not a fan that this costs 2 points, but because it is the middle side of the talent tree, pretty much all the main ones that you want to get are 2 pointers, so it feels a little bit weird. And with that, we can get to the capstones that will probably feed the demon more. You have Soul Carve back, which is the artifact ability from Legion that just breaks down souls from enemies and deals some damage. And of course, Elysian Decree, which is the fan favorite now, which I actually found out that I love way more than anything. And Elysian Decree also has at a choice note with a non-implemented talent that we don't know what it is so far. And although in the game it's not yet clear what it is, on the talent tree calculator in Warcraft, on Wowhead, it's data mine to be fodder to the flame, basically the Necrolord ability. So I'm not sure if that's what's going to be there or if that's just a placeholder. It's currently not in the game. The game has just like a blank space there. And there's also another blank space ability a little bit higher on the right hand side. But that's about it. So this would be the middle side of the talent tree. And of course you have stuff like Dark Lair Boon, kind of reworked, and you have Collective Anguish, which is probably an insta pick, easy pick, 1 pointer, it goes down, it's not too bad. And we go to the left-hand side, because I mentioned Frailty before. The capstone there that's just right next to the Soul Carver is the Weak-Willed. The Weak-Willed makes multiple application of Frailty to overlap. Right now it seems like the applications reset once you overlap them, so maybe that's good. It only stacks twice. So I don't know if that's intended or if I just didn't notice that my first one would drop by the time my third one would be placed, so something like that, but it's only stacking twice. So this is important because there's a bunch of Frailty mechanics that you will take into consideration. First of all, you obviously have Frailty. Then you have Void Reaver, which makes Frailty also get the enemies to do 4% less damage to you for 5 seconds for as long as Frailty lasts, and enemies struck by Soul Cleave are affected by Frailty for 5 seconds. I mean, that's good because Soul Cleave can put down Frailty, but you will probably still go down to Spirit Bomb because that's, you know, the DPS, the Frailty applier, what's been doing what's been happening with Frailty for a long time. You don't have to go to Spirit Bomb. You can actually dodge Spirit Bomb and keep going down towards the capstone without actually taking it. However, Spirit Bomb still does way more damage than Soul Cleave will ever do, even with the Soul Furnace that's a little bit higher up that makes Soul Cleave deal 40% extra damage every 10 souls consumed. That still doesn't feel like it's doing as much damage as Spirit Bomb, at least at level 60 with the current scaling. I don't know if that's gonna change at max level. And you also have Vulnerability, which is lower down the list, and Vulnerability might be the one that you would be more interested in, and probably what makes the Weak-Willed better, is that Frailty now also increases the damage that you deal to affected targets by 4%, and it's a 2-pointer, so it goes up to 8%. Now I was able to stack Frailty twice, so that means 16% extra damage, and this is clearly AoE, and this is probably better to be placed with Spirit Bomb anyway, so you essentially do 16% damage in AoE, not to mention there are other talents that increase fire damage done all around, so you will be looking at some decent amount of DPS output that also is converted into healing, although 8% healing, and obviously if it stacks it could be, I don't know exactly how this is supposed to work because stacking Frailty didn't seem to increase the amount of healing that I was getting, but it did seem to increase the amount of damage I was doing, and it didn't seem to increase the damage that was reduced from enemies doing to me. So either the tooltips are bugged, they're still being reworked, but if the Weak-Willed applies to all of the effects of Frailty, that could be really good, because if it doesn't, it's slightly controversial. We'll see, because numbers need to be simmed. On the right-hand side, you have a lot of AoE stuff, but more in the sense of sigils and immolates, and pretty much the entire tree on the right hand side seems to be catered towards raiding, because the main focus is Fiery Brand. And Fiery Brand has been something that the devs have tried to make into something more in all the expansions. Basically in BFA I think we had Revel in Pain, in Shadowlands we had the Fiery Brand spread. I think it was with Burning Alive that spreads Fiery Brand. And that was basically what had Vengeance able to tank shit in Season 1, since you would spread that damage reduction into AoE eventually and be able to survive a bunch of stuff. But I digress. First of all, on the right hand side, like I mentioned, there's still Immolation, and Immolation Aura has kind of worked in tandem with Burning, with Fiery Brand for a while, and one of the first sounds that you'll see is Burning Blood, which increases the fire damage by 8%. I mentioned this in the Frailty discussion as well. You also have Fell Flame Fortification, which adds a 5% magic damage reduction to you if your Immolation Aura is active, which is particularly good. And you, of course, have Charred Flesh all the way down below Burning Alive that I mentioned before, that spreads Fiery Brand. And Charred Flesh makes Immolation Aura increase the duration of Fiery Brand. And of course, if it's also spread, it will constantly tick and keep that Fiery Brand up. And there are other Immolation Aura talents that you've had right now, like Agonizing Flames and Fallout, which are particularly good. And you will probably really want to if you want to play the Immolation Aura style. And all the way down, you have the Capstone, which is down in flames, making Firebrand have a second charge, and this works very well with the previous sounds that I mentioned, Fiery Demise, which makes the target take 25% extra fire damage, and also Revel in Pain, which is back. That also gives you an absorb shield, rather, based on how much damage the target has taken. And it will be interesting to see how this scales in AoE with a spread out Fiery Brand. It could be some decent absorbs, because you do have a bunch of absorbs on the right hand side, not connected to Immolation Aura Firebrand, but you do have Soul Barrier, which is a lot more accessible now than it has been so far. I mean, there's also Bulk Extraction, but it still demolishes the spirit of the target of all those around you, dealing small amounts of fire damage to nearby enemies and extracting up to 5 lesser soul fragments, drawing them to you for immediate consumption. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown. I don't know. We'll see how this works out. And it kind of finishes down in the bottom side of the talent tree with Elysian Decree, like I mentioned, which I kind of hoped it would swap places with Soul Carver, because Elysian Decree is clearly the AoE soul generating, dealing damage ability that is working really well right now for Vengeance, especially in conjunction with Spirit Bomb. So I would particularly like to see it on the Soul Carver, because although it's okay in raids, it's not really raid single target focus. It does damage, sure, it's not bad, but it's clearly focused around AoE, so I would probably see them swapped. But I digress. That's basically neither here nor there, because if you are building whatever side of the talent tree you're building, if you are going in the middle first anyway to get, you know, that last resort, which you'll eventually have to get through Feed the Demon, because that's why probably what will make Feed the Demon more likely to be picked is because it's the only way to get to last resort. Then you'll likely have access to Elysian Decree as well, no matter what side you're going. It's just a question of will we have enough points, because it's still kind of awkward to build all of these towards the bottom of the talent tree. So far, looking at the first impression of Vengeance and playing it a little bit, however the undertuned dungeons are at the moment, I felt incredibly tanky. I felt like I didn't really need any healing. Not that I was healing a lot, but I was actually tanky. My HP didn't zigzag, didn't yo-yo, didn't do that kind of shit no more. So I'm curious to see how this performs in a high difficult octane endgame content like High Keys, Mythic Plus, and maybe some, you know, heroic Mythic rating. We'll see exactly how that plays. Right now it's looking particularly juicy for Vengeance. So if you are looking to main Vengeance in Dragonflight, you might be in for a really fun time, because considering that Vengeance is one of the specs that has never really had an in-depth skill tree of passives and abilities, right now with the first iteration of a talent tree, Vengeance is looking spicy, and I think we can all expect just better things to be added and designed and reiterated upon as we're going further into the beta. What do you think? Are you gonna main Vengeance? Let us know in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching the video, and thank you to your patrons for supporting the channel. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classical retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.